Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Jonathan Giroir from TechSoft 3D. I'm the Technical Marketing Manager here, and I'm joined by
Dave Upsall. I run the group at TechSoft called Corporate Development, which includes all the partner development representatives, consulting engineers, and support engineers that you may know.
We're really excited to have you here today to talk on the subject, enabling your applications with 3D PDF. This is something that a lot of you may be interested in. Many of you are partners of TechSoft already using some of our technology, and being able to expand that and use Hoops Publish to generate rich 3D PDFs is a real key differentiator between you and your competition in creating compelling applications. Here at TechSoft, we are driven to fuel innovation with unmatched 3D technology. And that really is the case with all of our different SDKs, enabling you to create very compelling applications from Hoops Visualize, which allows you to visualize 3D data on desktop and mobile. Hoops Exchange, which allows you to read over 20 different CAD file formats natively into your application, now available in part on mobile architectures. Today, we're going to be talking about Hoops Publish. This is our native SDK for publishing rich 3D PDFs. And then also Hoops Communicator, which is a zero-client multi-CAD viewing application for web viewing of your data in 3D. But let's take a look real briefly at what a 3D PDF is before we start talking about all the different workflows that you're able to use Hoops Publish to create. So here I have a PDF that's being viewed in Acrobat. This could be just Acrobat Reader. So within all versions of Acrobat, there is a 3D viewer. And so in addition to just having textual data like your logo of your company, tables, lines, and notes, you're able to embed 3D data into that. And so I have a fully functioning 3D scene graph here in browser that allows me to select on different parts within this assembly. This assembly was read in using Hoops Exchange, and then it would populate this PDF. In addition to being able to select on different parts and get the metadata that's associated with that. So if I select on different parts here, you'll notice the PDF itself changes down here in the bottom left. You'll see as I click on different parts, the supplier, reference number, material, and price for that particular part will change. I also have the ability to embed a bill of materials. And so here as I click through the bill of materials, that can be automatically generated from your original CAD assembly files, populate that parts list or bill of materials, and now I have bi-directional selection too between the parts list and my 3D model. In addition to that, there may be numerous views that were authored in your original CAD package, or you can author them at the time of creation of this PDF. And so those views here also are embedded in what we call a sliding table or a view carousel. And so we have different views that isolate specific parts or points of interest, allows you to navigate this in a different way as well. We have notes and instructions, the description, also the ability to follow different workflows. So this is a request per quote. We're going to need digital signatures and estimates on how maybe the maintenance or work or production of these parts of this assembly, we need to have those signed off on as well. So you can embed a lot of functionality here within your PDF. Additionally, other buttons that you can embed in your PDF that allow you to isolate parts or sub-assemblies and navigate your data in that way as well. So that was a real quick look at what you're able to do with 3D PDF. We're going to look at a few more and have several demos throughout this presentation. But now I'm going to let Dave talk about why 3D PDF for engineering. We're going to look at a number of different workflows and how you can use Hoops Publish to create that type of PDF.
Hi everyone. Before I get started, just wanted to mention that if you have questions as we go along, please feel free to put them into the dialog box that's in your GoToMeeting widget, and we'll try to answer those as we go along. Jonathan and I thought it would be a good idea if we just started with some basic information to make sure that we cover some essential facts about why 3D PDF really is well suited for dealing with engineering data, and then dig in a little bit more to the use cases and the product and how you would actually incorporate those into your application. The first thing, and you would find this question from a lot of people, is 3D PDF something special? And the answer is no. It is just a PDF file. From the outside, it looks no different than any other file. Whether you have 2D information in there or 3D information, it is still just a PDF file. And that means several things that we'll refer to as we go through the presentation. Another element that makes it very suitable is part of the PDF standard includes support for something called PRC, or Product Representation Compact, which is a file format that allows us to describe with full accuracy geometry, product manufacturing information, and metadata, as well as things like view states and so on. That is different than a tessellated format like U3D, which doesn't give you the ability to include a lot of that information. That PRC format is part of the ISO standards body, and so you're able to be assured that that data is going to continue to be supported going forward by an independent community rather than a specific vendor. Another thing that makes it very valuable is the fact that because it is just a PDF file, a lot of the tools and solutions that are out there that allow you to do things like digital signatures or forms or digital rights management all work with that same PDF file. And so companies that have infrastructure to support DRM find that this just plugs in. And you have support for view, measure, and markup, which is essential, of course, for collaboration. Jonathan mentioned the fact that a 3D player is embedded in every copy of Adobe Reader. That means that no matter who receives the file, as long as they have Reader on board, will be able to consume that information. We'll talk a little bit more as we go through about how PDF can be used to contain any data and what that value is. Something that a lot of people are unaware of is that the PDF platform allows you to create an interactive experience, and people who do this sometimes refer to it almost as having an app-like experience. And if you think about it, with a PDF file on a disconnected device, that's exactly what you would have. You don't need internet access to be able to use the PDF file, which can be important for a lot of workflows. So in situations where you would like to collect information, we're going to show you a couple of examples like that, you would be able to store the information, and then when connectivity is restored, be able to return or publish the PDF file. All of those things add up to a situation where you can support almost any downstream workflow with the PDF platform.
So let's take a look at that PDF that was in that slide. So here we're not looking at a request for quote, but instead we have a CMM report. And so normally in many of our workflows, we're creating reports of some sort, documentation of what's happened or what needs to occur. Here we have the original CAD file embedded within this PDF, and then also overlaid on top of that the CMM measurement information about how this part, as it was manufactured, compared to how it was designed. Additionally, we've embedded a number of important inspection points as well as minimum and maximums of that measurement data in a table here within the PDF. Normally, this report would be numerous pages, each page containing one static 2D view or a collection of 2D views and the information that was collected around that one inspection point. But using a 3D PDF, I'm able to embed all of that within a 3D view in one single table. So now we've taken maybe a numerous page document and really consolidated it to just one specific view. As I click through this table, it becomes interactive. Dave was saying we're building an app. We'll show you numerous examples of that as well. But as I click through the table, it will change what I'm viewing. possibly the view of the camera. I can change the notes that are being displayed. For an assembly, I can change the parts that are being displayed, as we saw in the request for quote. I can change the visibility of them, the transparency, the location, and that really allows me to build a rich PDF.
Okay, so continuing on a little bit with some of the additional benefits, of the platform for engineering is you have this notion of universal consumption. So today, Adobe Reader is found virtually on every desktop out there. There are some constraints today in the mobile and web area, but those are being addressed later this year and the first part of next year, where you would be able to take that same PDF file you're reading on your desktop with Adobe Reader and have the same experience on a mobile device or within a browser. One of the huge benefits that we hear over and over again of people who are using this solution on the end user side is that it snaps into any existing document management solution that you have. So regardless of the size of the company that your customers may be dealing with, they know how they manage PDF files just because of the ubiquity of PDF for all kinds of different functional areas within a company. There's nothing special that needs to be done if you want to manage and handle PDFs that happen to contain 3D data. So the cost of adoption becomes very low. In addition, companies also typically archive PDF files, and those same workflows, those same solutions are available when those PDFs happen to contain 3D data. And we've also seen a pickup in the amount of organizations that accept not only PDFs generally, but PDFs containing 3D as satisfying compliance requirements. So organizations or regulatory bodies such as the Federal Aviation Administration in the United States. So all of that consumption goes to the fact that this is a very easy thing for companies to adopt and deliver a lot of value. I mentioned the fact that you could support any workflow, and one of the things that we have is, as a consequence of TechSoft's role in the industry, is we get to see a lot of different ways that the technology is being used by the people who license the toolkit, and we're seeing examples of part catalogs, design change notifications, first article inspection, a lot of things where people have figured out a way to communicate better with 3D PDF. A lot of that work is all coalescing into how to create a technical data package, or a TDP, that's a part of many of the relationships that companies have with one another. One of the things that was a question perhaps 3 years ago was, are people really using this? And there's no question now that we've sort of passed that tipping point where this has become mainstream. And so companies that you see listed on the screen here are in various stages of adoption, but there are many of them that are actually deploying support for 3D PDF company-wide. So companies like Parker Hannifin, for instance. I'm trying to look on the list and see who else might be on there. Vallejo and other, General Electric, Boeing. So this is all being adopted on a very wide basis across industry. One of the things that we want to point out, and where we're going to focus the next part of the conversation, is we like to say that not all 3D PDF is created equal. And so we're going to explain to you a little bit about what we mean by that and the value that Hoops Publish brings in creating some of these higher value 3D PDFs. So one of the things that we see, particularly among small companies, is the notion of what we call 3D on a page. So if you look at the example on the left-hand side of the screen, you can imagine a very complex assembly with full geometry, full metadata, a lot of property information, but in the context of that PDF file, you're pretty limited in the workflows you can support because there's nothing else in that scene. So a workflow that you could potentially use, that PDF for is design review. If we contrast that with the PDF that's the right-hand side, there's a full interactive experience that Jonathan's going to show you in there that allows you to get things like ASME visual response and the ability to collect information and return it to a process application. So, Jonathan, can you show the folks a little about this?
Absolutely. So, Dave was talking about 3D on a page, and that in itself is pretty compelling. You're able to get a 3D experience within Acrobat, and that does allow you to see the geometry, investigate it, do design review. But what we're talking about, these 3D PDFs, these rich interactive 3D PDFs, is more than just getting a 3D model and being able to view it. And so here we have the same model in a viewer, in a PDF, but in addition to that, we've added a workflow, an inspection workflow around that. So notice here we have, again, a table on the right. I can click on one area of interest that needs to be measured. So here we have the type of the dimension, its distance, and its tolerance. And this is a fillable table. So let's say I actually now do that inspection. I'm able to enter in that information, and the logic that's been built into the PDF then gives me feedback. It says this is passed or failed. I can go to a different dimension. In this case, maybe it isn't to spec, and it shows me some response given the information that I've entered. Now, I can take this document and push that into a downstream workflow.
So, this is part of the power, I think, of the PDF platform, where we're using things that are standard capabilities inside PDF and just focus on how they can be used for manufacturing. So as Jonathan said, this entire manual inspection report, once it's completed, you can have a button. We don't have one on this particular form, though, that actually just says publish or file. And all of the data that's contained in that table, including the pass-fail conditions, will actually become part of the product record at that point. That document can then be stored in a PLM system. The information can be extracted from the table for statistical process control. You can virtually do almost anything you need with that data using standard PDF technology.
And on top of that, all of the dimensioning information, the PMI that's been embedded into this part, we're able to associate that back to the feature that's being measured. So here you see bidirectional selection on top of the part itself. As I click on particular features, it then allows me to highlight that in 3D.
Okay, so one of the things that's becoming more and more common is you see people moving towards adopting something called model-based definition. It has other names, but basically what we mean when we say MBD is there's a design tool that's defining completely what's required to manufacture a component or assembly. So not only the geometry, but all of the product manufacturing information, metadata, notes, and so forth are contained within that model-based definition. More and more companies developing, authoring applications are adding this capability in, and more companies are actually including this as part of their design or engineering practice. But that model, once it's created, can be leveraged in a number of different ways downstream of design for a number of the different use cases that we were talking about. And a term we're going to use here in the next couple of slides is the model-based enterprise. And this was a term that was coined originally by the National Institute of Standards and Technology here in the U.S. So Jonathan, if you could go to the next slide, please. One of the things that we've noticed, or that we have observed, is that the companies who adopt that process receive a lot of substantial benefits just on the design side of things. But we still have this issue of how to communicate that information outside of engineering. So a lot of the problems that happen are due to a lack of clarity around the technical documentation that accompanies the release of a product. And part of the benefit that, substantial part of the benefit that we see with people who adopt 3D PDF is, as Jonathan was explaining earlier, when you can compress a great deal of information into a small, compact experience that supports the workflow, you've done a lot to get rid of the ambiguities that create nonconformance issues. And so that's a huge benefit that people are seeing. And the way that you communicate that information downstream matters a great deal. So, you know, our belief and our observation is that because, you know, the way that you leverage that model-based design is by, you know, pushing it downstream with something like 3D PDF, that 3D PDF is required to achieve that. Now, it's not the only technology that you would use to necessarily communicate that. If you have you know, the right tools, you can, you know, behind the firewall give people a web experience that doesn't necessarily depend on a PDF file. But in almost every industry, there's the requirement to be able to distribute that either downstream or, you know, outside of the organization where people don't have access to those tools. And 3D PDF is the way that you actually get that done. So, you know, Jonathan mentioned in the CMM or scan example early on that, you know, you can create these intelligent reports. Being able to define a standard report format, be able to use that for a collection of parts or assemblies and reduce that amount of information but increase the clarity of it is one of the ways that you can achieve some of the benefits of the model-based enterprise. We talked a little bit about the different use cases. You know, a lot of those ambiguities come up in the manufacturing process, so, you know, things like work instructions or setup plans, inspection processes, MRO, maintenance, repair, and operation, showing how something can be disassembled, serviced, and then reassembled again, or even product usage is all part of what you can create using 3D PDF as a baseline technology. So let's talk a little bit about Hoops Publish and how it is that we are helping people achieve this. So with Hoops Publish, you have the ability to use the APIs to create a lot of the interactive objects that Jonathan was showing you in some of the earlier PDFs. So very simply, you can create a layout that is as simple or as complex as you like. Some companies, those layouts have a very close resemblance to 2D drawing forms, but with 3D interactivity in them. In other cases, they've been able to create entirely new ways of presenting that information. The components actually create JavaScript that operates within the PDF file to create the behaviors. You have the ability to add custom functions if you wish to do that. You can include the solid geometry or include simply tessellated geometry if there's concerns about the precise geometry going out. You have the ability to include product structure, give people a way to navigate through that. You can include or not include the PMI information, and you can include animations in there. All of those things can be offered out of the Hoops Publish SDK. So we kind of went through some of this. Creating a 3D PDF object is one of the high-level APIs. You can publish to a template. You can actually use Hoops Publish to create a tool that authors templates. The layout definition, including things like text fields or form fields, buttons. You can establish security, you know, create permissions. You can also attach documents to the 3D PDF. One of the things that PDF is capable of doing that we didn't highlight, but we should, is that because you can include any information in that PDF file, you can include, for instance, a STEP AP242 file or as an attachment to the PDF if the workflow requires the presence of that. As I mentioned, you can create geometry. You can make a decision about what kind of geometry you want to create and author all of the rich information that is part of that model inside the PDF in a way that is unique to your application experience. This is one way you can differentiate yourself from other people who are developing similar applications. If necessary, because of the integration we have with Hoops Exchange, we can support the reading in of that data, but you can also use Hoops Publish inside your native application and publish the data directly. Advanced controls, we mentioned some of these interactive objects, view carousels or sliders, tables and parts lists, buttons that cause changes in view state or behavior or promote navigation through the information. You can include barcodes. So a lot of this is imagery that's all part of standard PDF platform support. And then lastly, custom functions. So, if there's something that you would like that template or that PDF file to do that isn't supported by one of the higher level interactive objects that we provide in the API, you have the ability to create your own custom functions, include those in a template for reuse, or make them specific to an individual PDF file if necessary.
And just a note on that, all that's done with JavaScript. You can embed this JavaScript within the PDF itself, and there's a JavaScript interpreter that will run that code, so you can build up very complicated workflows. For people who are interested in that, starting next week, we have a free training webinar specific for JavaScript for 3D PDF. And so all of our partners and anyone is welcome to participate in that and learn more about those advanced workflows and building them using JavaScript. We'll have a link for you at the end of the webinar so you can sign up for that if it interests you.
Yeah, that should be very interesting for people. Okay, so just to kind of sum up here, one of the advantages that we bring to the table here is that the organization in TechSoft that develops the Hoops Publish SDK are the same people that invented the PRC format. This technology at one point was part of Adobe. It's now part of TechSoft, but in that process, all of the patents and specifications for PRC were released to the public as part of the ISO process. So there's no proprietary interest or ownership of PRC anymore, but the expertise on how PRC was created, how it works, lives within TechSoft, as well as now some of our partners. The technology that we use is essentially the same technology that you find in Acrobat and Reader when dealing with 3D information. We maintain that software for Adobe, so we also understand that platform, that product very well. We have several dozen companies that license the toolkit to create 3D PDFs. We also have a line of small end-user products called Tetra 4D, where there are over 10,000 licenses of that out in the field today. So we get to see a lot of different ways in which people use 3D PDF, and that gives us some domain experience around model-based enterprise. Again, just to reinforce what I said earlier, there's no question anymore that adoption here is past the tipping point. So if you're concerned at all about the fact that people aren't using this, don't be, because there's a lot of people using it. Go ahead. Last point I'm going to make for my part of this presentation is that our business is developing software tools to help people develop very compelling, very rich, very innovative applications. One of the examples of a company that chose us not only to provide them with the SDK, but to actually help them do the implementation is a unit of Dassault Systems producing a product called SolidWorks. So when SolidWorks needed to create a new application that they call MBD, of which the ability to create templates and publish 3D PDF files is just a part, they partnered with us to help them do that. And by virtue of the fact that the toolkit really makes it easier for you to think about how to build your application and less about how to build the PDF file, this entire application, so not just the PDF part of it, but also the model-based design part of it, the unique way that in the SOLIDWORKS application you define and constrain your model, annotate your model, and get it ready for publishing, that went from concept to production in less than 12 months for a very complicated effort. So there's a lot of value in both the HOOPS toolkit and also within the expertise that we bring to the table in doing those implementations.
And I would say that 3D PDF is critical to the success of this MBD product for SOLIDWORKS. Isn't that true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Let's take a look at a different application. Here I'm going to show you the HOOPS demo viewer. Now this is a demonstration application you can actually download and use for yourself from texsoft3d.com. It's something that we've built around numerous toolkits. So first, HOOPS Exchange for CAD reading, HOOPS Visualize for visualization, and of course HOOPS Publish is also part of this application. It allows you to publish a 3D PDF. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, using HOOPS Exchange, I'm going to load in a CATIA part. And so I'm not connected to any CATIA API here. This is just running right on my laptop here. I'm able to extract all the visualization information, all of the PMI. I can show you the PMI list here, or if I want to, I can enable specific views, specific PMI views, and that PMI is associated with surface data for that particular feature. What's important about this is this information here that we've extracted from the CAD file is exact geometry. And so here I have the cylinder as it was defined in CATIA, the edge data as it was defined in CATIA, and we read that natively without any conversion, and we make it accessible through this format that Dave was describing called PRC. And that's really a superset of all of the different ways CAD packages can represent their data. You're not required to bring data in from a CAD file. You can author it yourself using HOOPS Publish, but this is a very seamless move from CAD data to PRC to PDF, because that PRC data is the core of how 3D data is represented within a PDF. So there's two ways. You can have this exact representation called PRC. There is another way called U3D that's just surface data, so your tessellated data within a PDF. Both is 3D data. Both can be embedded in a PDF. Both are supported by HOOPS Publish. But this is the actual native geometry that we have here within this HOOPS demo viewer. And the next thing that I would want to do is take that exact geometry. I don't have to, but I want to embed that with the PMI, with the views, with the metadata into a PDF. And this is something that you can do within your own application. Many of you already are licensing one toolkit or another from TechSoft. So if you license HOOPS Exchange, all of your data that you're using in HOOPS Exchange is set as PRC in memory, and that can very easily be output to a PDF file. Other ones of you are using HOOPS Visualize, and there's a bridge between Visualize and PDF using HOOPS Publish. Some of you are using HOOPS Communicator, so that's our web-based technology for web viewing. That as well, within the conversion tool, has the ability, again, to output a 3D PDF to a specific template. So that PDF here is on my desktop. I have all of the 3D geometry there. I can pan, zoom, rotate. I can select. It's just a particular one single part. But then notice here in my sliding table, I have all of my views as thumbnails, and I can select on that particular view. It becomes visible for me. If I click on a particular piece of PMI, again, we have that bidirectional selection between the feature and the PMI that then highlights that particular area of interest. So you can very easily take HOOPS Publish in an existing HOOPS application and use it to create these PDFs, publish to a specific template that you create, or if you have a standalone application not using any TechSoft technology quite yet and you want to be able to support 3D PDF, these rich 3D PDFs, you can use HOOPS Publish to take your data and embed it in a PDF seamlessly.
So I mentioned earlier that there are quite a number of companies that license this technology. If you have been around any kind of model-based design initiative or been working towards any sort of model-based enterprise strategy, you probably have heard of a number of these companies. And again, part of the benefit that we bring to you if you're thinking about how to build an application is that we've seen almost any implementation strategy that you could imagine, and can help guide you in making some good decisions about how to implement the technology into your solution in a way that's differentiated from the other solutions on your competitor side of things.
So that's the end of our presentation. We have some time left. We do really appreciate everybody's time today to learn a little bit more about 3D PDFs and how you can use that to create improved workflows for your customers, especially for downstream consumption of engineering data and 3D data. We have a number of resources here. We do encourage you to go to techsoft3d.com and check out the numerous different tools we have on that website, as well as information. There's sample PDFs that you can download and explore for yourself. Additionally, that Hoops demo viewer that I showed you, that's available for download. If you're interested in taking a deeper look at our SDK, Hoops Publish itself, and be able to connect that to your application, you can sign up for a trial at techsoft3d.com/trial. And that's a 60-day free evaluation of our SDK, Hoops Publish, or any of our SDKs, and we pair you with a consulting engineer to help you implement this technology efficiently and effectively within your application. We also have that JavaScript webinar coming up. So in addition to just using Hoops Publish, you may want to create really advanced workflows using JavaScript that you embed in a PDF. That's a free webinar. Go to techsoft3d.com/JS webinar to sign up for that. It starts next Tuesday and it runs for 1 hour a week every Tuesday for 4 weeks. And so that's going to be a very useful webinar. Of course, you can contact us at info@techsoft3d.com. Before we close down the webinar, though, we'd like to open it up to questions. If you have any specific questions, we have plenty of time here to answer those.
So we'll wait a few minutes to give people a chance to type in questions. If you would like to hang with us and learn a little bit more, please do. If you have heard what you wanted to hear, thank you again for joining us, and we'll give you the rest of the hour back.
Right. So one question that came in was, can it extract semantic PMI from a SolidWorks file? So I just want to back up a little bit. Hoops Publish is a publishing SDK, and it creates these rich documents, and you can populate its data structures using the SDK. You can populate the PMI data structures that are part of PRC and embed that in a PDF, and that's fantastic, and you've seen that. You also saw the workflow where we took a CATIA file which has PMI in it as well, and we were able to convert that to PRC. Then the PRC file then gets embedded in the PRC data gets embedded in the PDF. Now, there's two types of PMI as well. So there's visual PMI, which is just the way in which it is displayed visually, and that's something that you see. But additionally, within that definition, there's the ability to have what we call semantic PMI. So that's the machine definition of it in a set of data structures that can then be interpreted, maybe not displayed. And so we are able to read both semantic and visual PMI using Hoops Exchange. So not Hoops Publish. So that data gets parsed from the original CATIA file using Hoops Exchange. It gets brought in to PRC and then gets embedded in a PDF, and you can author that using Hoops Publish. Now, using Hoops Exchange, the question is, what about SolidWorks data? And so yes, we do read PMI from a SolidWorks file, but the question was, do you read the semantic PMI from a SolidWorks file?
And the answer is we do.
Yeah, so both that visual and that semantic PMI. Thank you for that question. All right, another question. If I already have Hoops visualized, do I need Hoops Exchange to connect with Hoops Publish? The answer is no. So if you already have Hoops visualized and you want to create a 3D PDF, you can just use Hoops Publish. Exchange isn't needed, but they are very tightly bound. They share that PRC kernel, and so when you go to our website, you actually download Exchange Publish just because they do share a lot of the same core logic, but you would only license Publish. You wouldn't get access to all of those CAD readers. If that's something that interests you at a later point, that can be turned on. It's just it's a licensing switch that gets flipped. Hoops Demo Viewer uses Hoops Exchange. It does use Hoops Exchange. That's absolutely correct. But I can show you. It uses Hoops Exchange to read the data in, but it uses Hoops Publish to write the data out. So I could load in a file that doesn't use Hoops Exchange to read the data into the Hoops Demo Viewer, and there's a bridge between our scene graph, our Hoops Visualized scene graph, and Hoops Publish. And in that case, that bridge would only take the surface data, so the triangulated, tessellated data that exists in the Hoops scene graph, and then it would embed that in the PDF because we don't have that BREP geometry. On top of that, though, if you have it within your system, so your authoring CAD system, if you have that BREP geometry, that absolutely can be pushed into the PDF using Hoops Publish if you so desire. All right. Is it possible to add tessellated data to PRC files? Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Yeah, part of the PRC specification not only includes support for the exact geometry, but also for tessellation and the compression algorithms that go along with it to take that tessellated data and make it as compact as possible. All of that is part of what is in the PRC specification. So again, nothing proprietary about that.
Yeah. So PRC represents assembly data. So how your parts are configured and connected, subassembly at part level. It includes all of your visualization information, which is tessellated data, and that can either be extracted using a Hoops Exchange or authored using Hoops Publish. It creates your PMI, both semantic and visual, and of course it contains all of your BREP data, so the exact geometry, and that can be in numerous forms. So it could be NURBS data, NURBS curves and surfaces, B-splines. It could be parametric surfaces and curves, or it could be 3D surfaces and curves. So no matter where your data is coming from, no matter really how you represent it within your internal kernel. So a lot of times we have metrology companies, they represent their data in one way or another internally in memory, and they want to push that out to a PDF. And really, no matter how it's represented, if you use your own internal geometric kernel, your own mathematical kernel, or if you use one like Parasolid or ASYS, however that data is formatted in memory, it's very easy to get it into the PDF. All right, creating an app with Publish, how to create an interactive app where users preview the object added with API. I need Visualize to see the PDF. All right, so first of all, you don't need Visualize to see the PDF. That's not required. The PDF you can view in the free Acrobat Reader, which is installed on 90+% of all internet connected PCs today. So you do not need Hoops Visualize. You can just create a PDF using Hoops Publish. And you can author all of your previews and all of your objects with the API. And so you don't need Hoops Visualize to do that. Hoops Visualize is kind of nice because it gives you this window into your objects, and there's a lot of high-level tools in Hoops Visualize like handles and translations and cameras and colors and lighting that allows you to very quickly author 3D data, but you're not required to use that or the demo viewer.
Yeah, if you're wanting to publish a thumbnail of the 3D data that's contained in the scene as part of your application, for instance, maybe as an icon of reference to be able to access that particular thing, that's all part of what is provided with Hoops Publish.
Yeah. Another question, what about securing the 3D data in the PDF? So there's numerous ways of pushing, first of all, pushing your data into the PDF. If you're concerned about intellectual property, you can push in just the tessellated visualization data. So you don't include any of the boundary representation. So it would be very hard to manufacture to tolerance that particular part with the data that's in the PDF. So that's one way, is you don't include the BREP. You strip out the PMI if so desired, and you just have a visualization of the part just for design review.
Yeah, what data gets published into the PDF is under the control of the application developer through publish. So as Jonathan said, in the case of something like an MRO or assembly disassembly workflow, all you really need in that particular case is the visual representation of the objects, the animations of representing the process. There's no reason to include the precise geometry or any of the product manufacturing information. With regards to just securing the data, that's basically your first level of capability. Within the PDF platform itself, you've got two different levels of security generally. One is on a PDF file. That level of security is pretty easy to crack with common tools. So what most companies have done is, if they're interested in that level of security where I want to be able to do things like control what someone can do with the PDF file when they receive it. That is really in the area of digital rights management, and you have a variety of solutions to choose from out there. Technology you can integrate into your own product, overall solutions that the customer can buy or license. And this is part of the value of the PDF platform. Is if you think about every place that you see PDF files today, whether it's electronic health records, which have to be highly secure, or forms being used in the banking or financial industry, the horizontal use of PDF is what creates this very rich ecosystem of tools. So there's virtually any number of options you could have for securing it. It just depends on what the requirements of your application or your customer happen to be.
I'd like to just come back, thank you Dave, come back to one of the questions for a little clarification. That was using Hoops Exchange to extract semantic PMI from SolidWorks files. Mm-hmm. So we actually at this point are working on semantic PMI.
Correct.
From SolidWorks. We have visual PMI from SolidWorks, but that semantic PMI is a project in the works right now. Mm-hmm. Where it gets a little bit gray is the SolidWorks MBD product. It exports to a PDF semantic PMI, and that was done through an engagement directly with SolidWorks. So they're using Hoops Publish to create semantic PMI directly in the PDF, and they're not using Hoops Exchange at all. So that's just a little clarification there. And in the future, so we're continuing to evolve the Hoops Exchange SDK. Semantic PMI will be supported without having to connect to SolidWorks itself. And then another question, what about the size of these PDFs? And that's a fantastic question. Many times the original CAD file can be quite heavy. And when we extract all of the assembly, visualization, PMI, and BREP data and embed it in a PDF, we're able to minimize the size and using what we know is true about PDFs is the compression technology within the PDF to get a much smaller file format. And then on top of that, we can add additional compression by changing the geometry from one form to another, or compressing the visualization data. So there's a lot of tools within Hoops Publish to make the PDFs much, much smaller. And when I say much smaller, we get at least a file that's half the size of the original CAD file, but in most cases it's 90% smaller, and we can get as much as 98 or 99% compression if you turn on all the bells and whistles. Again, with any sort of compression algorithm, there are limitations to that, right? So as you compress it more and more, it might visually look good, but then when you go to measure it, no longer do you have the accuracy of measurement in the 3D data. But we can get these files extremely small, and we see workflows being done where all of the CAD data in one particular system, maybe a PLM system, is being converted to 3D PDF, and now that becomes the viewable form for their 3D data. Another question, does the SDK allow editing existing PDF content and or add contents to an existing PDF? So yes and no. So the SDK allows you to create new PDFs from scratch. It allows you to create something called a PDF template, which is the framework for which you can publish your 3D data to. It also allows you to enrich existing PDFs, so you can add additional content, you can merge PDFs, you can add pages to existing PDFs, but you can't change or delete objects, and so there is some limitation to what you can do with the SDK. Really, it's an authoring SDK or an enriching SDK. Those are things that, if there's a real need, it's an evolving SDK as well. And really, for any of our toolkits, about half of any new feature development is being driven by customer requests. And so that's something we'd be more than happy to talk to you about.
Part of the reason for that is that, generally speaking, a document, once it's created, is an artifact that has to live in that current state for a long time. And so, when you go through the process of creating a new version, often what most implementers will do is simply republish again, because the overhead to do that is pretty light. But as Jonathan said, there are situations where you can update the content in that PDF file. There are just some limitations around that.
Right. All right, we're going to leave just one more minute for any additional questions. If you think of one that we weren't able to answer, we're more than happy if you email us at info@techsoft3d.com. We'll get back to you. All right, one last question. Is it possible to create a PDF which shows associated PMI nodes under the respective view node? Most of the PDF I see, PMI nodes are grouped under the product node. Oh, that's a fantastic question. Let me see. Yes. So my engineer is saying, yes, you can do that. And then the last question. So yes, each view filter PMI. Yeah, so each view will filter the PMI display. So does this mean that Hoops Publish APIs are not working on PDF but on an intermediate format? I might need a little more clarification for that question.
I think I'm going to take a guess here, but I think the answer is that there is no intermediate format. So, for instance, if you have a geometric model and a lot of the information attached to it in your application, when you implement Hoops Publish, you are writing that data directly into the PDF file. So there's no intermediate format involved whatsoever. In a couple of the examples that Jonathan used, we were bringing data in through Hoops Exchange. But when we do that, we're bringing it in as PRC. So if you accept that PRC is part of the PDF standard, then it isn't intermediate in that sense, because we're just going to write it back out into the PDF file.
I think the question is actually focused on the PDF itself. And the way in which we do that, Hoops Publish is a C++ SDK, and there's a set of objects. There's a page object, there's a 3D annotation object, there's a button object, and using C++, you say create a page, create a document, create another page, add them to the document, create a 3D annotation, that's your 3D data, add it to this page, add a button, add it to this page at this location, at this color. And so you build up this set, you build up your document in memory, and then you hit save, and then the PDF is written. And so PDF is it's an ISO standard. It's a binary file that each bit means something very specific, and so that data that you specified in your code, all of that now gets translated into a PDF, and that becomes a PDF. But we're using native Adobe technology, in fact, to create the PDF underneath the Publish SDK. Creating from spec is a very time-intensive activity, and we don't recommend it. That's the whole value proposition of Hoops Publish, is you don't have to write the PDF from spec. Also, navigating the Adobe SDK is not without some problems, and so we've really simplified it within this SDK that also really marries it to 3D. And so that's the real focus, is you can go out and get a PDF SDK somewhere. That's fantastic, but the value here is how it's connected to the 3D data, creating rich engineering formats or files. The API right into an intermediate format that create a PD. So again, no, the API does not write into an intermediate format that writes to the PDF. So all of it is done in memory using the API, and then at the very end you save your document, and then the PDF is written to disk. And if you want to take a look at that, we'd be happy to provide you with an evaluation. And within our evaluation package, there's a number of very simple samples that allow you to create these PDFs, and you can kind of walk through that yourself. But fantastic questions. Thank you so much for those. Now, if there's no other questions, I think we're going to end the session. How is Hoops Publish working with Hoops Communicator? Okay, so Hoops Communicator is, again, our server-based service that you can push out to your own infrastructure, or you can host on like an Amazon AWS server, and it takes CAD data or your own data, and it authors it into a web viewable form that then is viewed in our Hoops web viewer. So it's a viewer that sits on all of your major browsers, so both desktop and mobile browsers, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, all those support the web viewer, and you can see this data in your web browser. But part of Hoops Communicator is a set of export functions, and so in addition to exporting to this web viewable form, you can export to a 3D PDF. And so all the files I showed you, that 3D geometry can be embedded in a PDF. You can specify a template to author the 3D data to using Hoops Communicator. Hoops Communicator can author to other file formats as well, so you're not just limited to this web viewable form or this PDF, but you can export to a step file, for instance, or a thumbnail image, or a large rendered image. So there's a lot of opportunity there to create different deliverables using Hoops Communicator, and that's just something that you would build a web infrastructure around.
We're giving one last chance for questions before we close the webinar, and it doesn't look like we have any more. So again, on behalf of Jonathan and myself, thank you for your time, your attention, giving us an hour of your day. We very much appreciate it. Please use the links. You will get, as Jonathan mentioned, the white paper that will help explain this, some of what we've talked about today. And we hope to hear from you.
All right, thank you, everyone.